hear me?
Dan.
Yep.
Thank you. This is Stephen. So I see Adam. Is that Adam Cunningham?
It is.
All right. Do you know, are you sitting in today for the mayor?
I was not supposed to be. I'm not sure
Okay.
if he's attending.
Kind of keep you with the ability to talk for right now. That makes sense.
Copy that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Chair, it's 12:02. I think we can go ahead and get going.
Do we have a quorum?
I'm doing a count now, but just looking at faces, I believe we do.
Okay, great. All right, we'll kick things off. Welcome everyone to our first WCCC meeting of 2026. It's hard to believe 2026 is here. We'll go ahead and get started. Let's see here. We'll start with public comment. Stephen, did we have anyone submit a request for public comment, or do we have anyone? If anyone's in the gallery and would like to give public comment, please indicate that by raising your hand. And
I'll
when I say raise your
confirm.
hand, press the little button that says raise hand,
Yeah.
since we can't see you.
And I'll confirm, Chair, we didn't have anybody submit comments in writing or request to speak today.
All right, and no one in the gallery?
I don't see any hands, no, sir.
Okay, we'll move on. Again, welcome everyone, and we have any alternates attending, please let us know. And with that, Stephen, could you do roll call? Oh, I think you're still muted.
Has to happen every meeting.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll, as usual, we'll go in order of jurisdictions. So starting with City of Banks, Mayor Kirk.
Here?
You. City of Beaverton, Mayor Beatty.
Here.
Thank you. City of Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Present.
Thank you. Durham, Mayor Drake. We'll be keeping an eye out. Okay. Forest Grove, Mayor Wenzel.
Here.
Thank you. Hillsborough, Mayor Pace.
Here.
Thought I saw you. Thank you. King City, Mayor Kazmersky. All right, keep an eye out. For North Plains, Mayor Dumbrow. Thank you. Sherwood, Mayor Rosner. I know you're here.
I am present.
Excellent. City of Tigard, Mayor who?
Here.
Thank you. Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Delighted to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. For Wilsonville, I think we're keeping an eye out for Mayor O'Neill, but I'll mark that Councilor Cunningham is here. And for Washington County, Commissioner Fye.
Good afternoon, President.
Hello, Rosenthal.
Yo.
I think I saw. Hello. For ODOT Region 1, Stephanie Turner.
Here.
Thank you. Port of Portland, Dan Eisenbeis.
Here.
Thanks, Dan. And for TriMet, I think I saw John. Is that right?
Present. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that concludes the roll call.
All right, thank you, Stephen. We'll move on to action items. We have just one item on the action item agenda today, and that's consideration of the meeting minutes from our December 15th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those? If you have and don't have any suggested changes or edits, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hands.
Aye.
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 All right, and all those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. All right, we will go on and move on to our informational and discussion section. We have TriMet here today. I believe we have Grant O'Connell and John Sierra from TriMet to provide an overview on TriMet's proposed service cuts. I am sure this is going to be a lively conversation. We've tried to allocate, we've got about 30 minutes allocated. For the folks from TriMet, make sure as you're going through the presentation, you allow plenty of time for discussion and conversation on this. But we're pleased to have you here and look forward to hearing about how you guys have totally reversed course and there'll be no cuts in Washington County. That's what I heard you guys are gonna talk about.
What a great intro, Chair. Thank you for that. We appreciate you guys having us here today. Stephen, do we have Grant O'Connell promoted as a panelist yet? Okay. So I just want to introduce Grant. He is our manager of service planning and development here, who's helping work on this concept. Today, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about the service cuts in our budget that we have come to you with before, but with now a more concrete proposal. I just want to be clear, this is not a conversation that we want to be having with you all. This is a major challenge for TriMet, and we appreciate you all working with us and engaging with us honestly and working with us to try and figure out the best path forward. So I'm going to kick it to Grant, who's going to present to you today, and then we'll leave as much time as we can for questions and comments. Thanks.
Thanks for that introduction, John. Great to be with you all. I want to stress what has been said. This is a proposal and we're here to have a conversation. This is not baked. Let's talk. Let's see, we have a challenge before us, but we have an opportunity to tweak and we'd like to hear from you if there are things that you think we should do different, or we're happy to share data to come to a different conclusion. So I'll go ahead and start sharing the slides. Pardon while I rearrange screens and make sure I can still see you all. All right. Thumbs up if you're seeing the slide deck.
We can see it. Thank you.
So jumping right in with short time. We did announce last summer that we are facing a $300 million budget gap. Driven by many factors, most importantly, inflation has increased costs by 56%. You know, I've watched as you all in the TAC, you know, I serve on the TAC level, and similarly as you all are facing those increasing construction costs with MISTIP and trying to do as much as you'd like to do with MISTIP, it's a similar concept here. We are just facing, really those increasing costs are taking a bite out of things. We have also it's been a challenging time in our community. We have been compelled to make fairly significant investments in safety and security to ensure the comfort of those who wish to ride. But that has come at a cost, and that has been a tripling of expenses around ensuring safety and security. We do still charge a fare to ride, and so when ridership is down, as illustrated by this chart here, that means fare revenue is down. Ridership is kind of plateauing, seeming to hover around a level of about 70% of pre-pandemic levels of service. And if less people are riding, that means less fare revenue coming in, and therefore less money to spend operating service. We are a payroll tax-funded organization, and that headline where it says layoffs are reaching Great Recession levels, well, in the Great Recession, we had to cut service by 10%. So all of those things are mounting to form a fairly challenging picture for us. What have we done? You know, Forward Together, which was really my favorite project to work on, was all about trying to recapture ridership. It was about making sure that the network that we provide for services was meeting the post-pandemic travel need, and therefore hopefully recapturing that ridership loss since during the pandemic. So we did really try to make investments where we could within the constraints of the labor market to pivot service towards where it's needed most. We worked with many of you all on the transit funding package, and I think we all know the state of that right now. We did increase fares in January of 2024, and we'll likely ask for the community for us to do so again in 2028. We have reduced spending already, and we will continue to do more. Just November, we did do a 5% cut of service staff through eliminating open positions or layoffs. We are trying to take this head on. We have also done some very targeted surgical cuts just this past November on 5 lines when trimming some trips where ridership is lower, and we're going to do that again in March of this year. But those are really very, very surgical, very less than 0.5% cut type of a thing. But what's before you today, what I'm here mostly to talk about is the proposal that would take effect in August of 2026, August of this year. So in framing that, our overall target for service reductions is 10%. And this proposal represents about 6.5% of that 10% target. So anything we defer or don't do from this proposal will be more that we will have to cut in the following fiscal year. So we do plan on having this conversation again the following fiscal year about more cuts. And so please, as we weigh these things, consider that this isn't a one and done, that there will be more as indicated on our financial. So when we think about having to cut service, there's lots of things to consider. There's how often the trains come. There's the hours of day that they operate or where they operate, that we call that coverage. There's other considerations. There's funding towards partner services. There's the impact to the lift boundary. So within 3/4 of a mile of our fixed route service, we provide paratransit, door-to-door paratransit service for those who are unable to ride fixed route service as mandated by the ADA. But when we make a change to the fixed route service, the lift service changes commensurate with that. So we do weigh all of these things fairly carefully. So things that we could consider doing, doubling the headway or how often a bus comes. If it comes every 30 minutes, it could come every 60. We can look where things operate very close by or are indeed on top of each other and see if there's a way to do the same or about the same with less. Or we can most commonly, so the frequent service network, our network, we have a network of bus lines where we provide something of an expectation that you should be able to see a bus every 15 minutes, that we could back off that to every 17.5. So those are all the things that we thought about or considered when confronting this challenge. So we took those things in concept out to the public just this past fall, and indeed many of you all may have helped get out the word on that effort. But we got nearly 5,000 responses from in-person and online activities to get feedback. Pretty heavily, people favored protecting later night and weekends and high-frequency service. Notably also, there was no significant difference in those preferences among different demographics or throughout the metro area. Largely, what people favored as what we should look at first in one area is similar to what we saw in other areas. So coming out of that outreach process, the things that kind of said cut first were basically all under, even the green line is all under the idea of where things are very close together or indeed on top of other services. Can you look to make do with less there, an efficiency look? So reduce duplication is really a broad umbrella for where folks wanted us to focus. But we took kind of in the middle range that eliminating some low ridership lines may not be completely off the table in favor of keeping frequent service late nights and weekends. We did a lot of, so here I'm illustrating the survey results, but also in comparison with lots of other things that we consider. Most importantly, of course, cost. The green line, for example, of this proposal, I said we have an overall 10% target. This proposal is about 6.5% of the way towards that 10% target. The green line is 2.5% of that 6.5%. So it's a huge cost savings. And in fact, if it were to go through, it is in essence forestalling other cuts because it's such a high dollar amount of savings. But compared against the survey results, things that I would kind of draw attention to is those frequent service. FS is our internal abbreviation for frequent service. These four here would be anything that affects frequent service. Both the survey results said to cut those last. They do have extremely high ridership, something in the neighborhood of 70 to 80% of our bus ridership happens on those frequent service lines. But also, if you were paying real close attention to Forward Together, what guided our service expansion in Forward Together was making sure that we were improving on people's ability to get to jobs. What is the impact of people's ability to use our system to get to jobs? So we used that same methodology that we used which cuts would most adversely affect job access, and those frequent service lines showed up as having the most adverse effects. So this is kind of how everything scored, of all the things that we could think about to potentially do to address the balancing the budget. These are how all of those things scored. And you'll see kind of the max green line has the most green, and also that network changes. So that's where we tried to lean pretty heavily. And so this is what our proposal, as we eliminated all the other things that we didn't do in this proposal, this is how that proposal scores. Most importantly, guided by the survey results. We really wanted to lean heavily on what we felt like we heard from the community. And so these are the things we move forward with in broad concept and category. And again, just noting this is 6.5% of the 10% target. So network change, what does that mean exactly? So operating along Barnes Road through the West Hills is not a high density area where Line 20 goes today. And so we saw an opportunity where, Beaverton, we could connect South Beaverton to Cedar Hills shopping area along Cedar Hills Boulevard, that portion of Line 20, keep that as frequent. That's really valuable. But cover that with frequent service on Line 76, which enables the Barnes Road segment of Line 20 to operate at a reduced frequency of every 30 minutes where there's lower density of activity than lower density of ridership service. But also notably on this map here, the extension that we recently did operating service between Tualatin and Oregon City along I-205 has shown very low ridership and indeed less than 5 people average per trip. And so it's in the proposal to eliminate that extension that we most recently implemented up to Line 76 between Tualatin and Oregon City. Another example of network changes. Line 45 currently starts in Tigard through parts of Tigard, hits Washington Square and goes on into downtown Portland along Garden Home in Portland. The majority of the ridership on that route is actually high school service getting to I.W. Wells High School. Indeed, Portland Public Schools pays us service to provide for high schools because their high schools don't have yellow bus service. And so that's largely where the ridership is on that line. So we're essentially proposing to reduce it to that. eliminate a portion of it operating in Tigard, and then preserve just peak hour service and pair it up with line 39. And then in Hillsdale, there is line 54 that goes into downtown Portland every 15 minutes or better. And so when we think back on those, not only did the survey results say preserve frequent service, and the job access analysis says there would be a big impact to play if we cut frequent service. The other thing is, as we drill down on each of these comparisons, we're relying on that frequent service network to shoulder the burden. What makes this proposal somewhat palatable to not have line 45 go on into downtown Portland itself is the idea that there is a frequent service line there in Hillsdale where folks could transfer. So those frequent service lines end up playing a role to shoulder the burden to enable some other cost savings measures. So this is some examples of network changes that we're proposing there in Washington County. Another one, more affects Clackamas County a bit with line 37 proposed to be eliminated along Boones Ferry and Country Club, but affects the route Tualatin takes. So the 996 coming from Tualatin could operate on Boones Ferry Road instead of taking the freeway, which would enable the elimination of line 37 along Boones Ferry Road. And then the line 96 would hit Barber Transit Center and come on into downtown Portland, making limited stops from there. That 10 to 15 minute slower service for the line 96 between Tualatin and downtown Portland enables more people to make use of that resource by taking it off the freeway and putting it on a local street where others may also take use of its abilities. Another thing there on this map is line 38, also continues on to downtown Portland from Mountain Park in Lake Oswego, but this would just terminate that also because it duplicates service with other lines in Portland, terminate that also in Barber, at Barber Transit Center. And if you note in both of these two examples, the line 45 going into downtown Portland and the line 38 no longer going into downtown Portland, I would note that about 68% of this proposal for cuts affects Multnomah County. So a fairly healthy portion of it is occurring where service would no longer operate in Multnomah County. A line elimination. We have long, sought productivity goals. We want to feel like we're seeing good use of taxpayer dollars. So that means people using the service we provide. Pre-pandemic, our aspirational goal for service was 15 boarding rides per hour. Well, in recognition of the pandemic, we brought that down to just 8. But in this exercise, we set a new threshold. Well, we would look at anything 6 boardings per vehicle hour or less. And so the line 97 that operates along Tualatin Sherwood Road is seeing only about 3 people use it per hour that vehicle is out on the road. Now, I know that I'm not here to sell any of this. I'm not saying any cut is absolutely a cut. I don't mean to minimize those. What's questioned before you is looking at the data, would you come to a different conclusion if you were in our shoes? And this is what we're seeing here. So we did do a Title VI impact. Quickly, I'll say there is no system-wide disproportionate burden on low income, nor disparate impact on minorities. It does have an impact on lift service. What's outlined in kind of green, yellow, lighter green, and red here is areas where lift service by this proposal may be reduced. But we did see that that's about 75 people of our annual lift boardings, or less than 1%. Minimize that in terms of that is, of course, still an impact for folks, but we're looking to do the least impactful thing we can. So we are in a comment period. We want to work with you. We can make changes before we take this to our board. But we will do a listening session at our board March 18th, And then the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the change will then be March 25th. A second reading would go on April 22nd before taking effect in August of 2023. And then after that, August 2023, we would be back before the public with another round of proposed cuts. What are we doing to get the word out? We've sent mailings. I just got mine in the mail over the weekend to addresses near significant changes. We have posted the bus stops. We've done an email, social media, and news campaign. We have a website with a survey. And we're doing open houses throughout the area at the Beaverton Library, Tualatin Library, I would note in particularly for Washington County folks. We are also doing a virtual house that kicks off several virtual houses, the first of which is tomorrow evening. I'll be there. And 2 more after that with ASL translation and in Spanish. So I tried to do it as quick as I could here. But at this point, I'll happily take questions with John.
All right, thank you, Grant. And I'm sure there's going to be a few questions. I wrote down a long list, but I'll let everyone go first. Mayor Wenzel, you have your hand up.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Grant. Obviously, you drew the short straw in presenting to us today about this topic. So thank you for doing that. I want to just say maybe some things my colleagues are saying. It's just this very unfortunate, right? Given the time period of the governor's housing initiatives and public transportation, the fact that a large majority of my community is safer right now taking public transportation than being in their cars. To lose service is it's terrible. It's just a perfect storm of bad timing. But with that said, I understand you're in a difficult situation. My question is, I understand that a large portion of the budget was used for security and safety. And my question is, do you have the metrics to show that increased ridership and worked? And with that data, is that a possible cut? Like, are we going to keep, spending large sums of money on safety and security if it's not bringing ridership up, if it's not doing the goals that TriMet aimed to do?
Mayor Wenzel, I can take a crack at that one. I think, first of all, we do have data that shows that calls for emergency services on the TriMet system have gone down. So I think one way to interpret those is that our investments have helped push bad actions off our system and bad actors off our system. So the safety has improved. It's, I think, harder, and maybe Grant, I don't know if you have anything to say about this. I think it's harder to tie our safety outcomes directly to ridership. I think we've seen our ridership pretty much correlate with how much people are going back to work in offices in downtown and across the region. I think it's most closely correlated to that. We've also seen that people haven't been going back to rideshare services. So it's not just TriMet, it's across the board that travel is kind of flatlining at where we're at. So I think it's hard to tie safety to ridership. We do have data saying that our system has become safer over time with these investments. I'm happy to follow up with you directly to show that for you. Our safety is going to continue to be a priority for us because we have to maintain this. We can't expect to get ridership back ever if we're not able to make sure that our riders are safe. So I think for the time being, we should expect that spending all things are on the table right now because we only have so much money. So I'll follow up with you with that data and then continue to answer any other questions you've got on that.
I think the only thing I would add, I don't work in safety and security, so John may be actually in a better position, but I would just characterize it not as increasing ridership, but as preserving, because we're still down. Ridership is down, right? And so it's not about increasing, it's trying to hold on to what we have. And I would think about it too holistically that ridership in and of itself does provide a natural level of safety and security. Part of the reason, I think one of the many reasons we felt that we found ourselves in this position is because ridership is down, and so if ridership is plateauing, and there's a correlation between and ridership is plateauing. My instincts tell me, again, it's not something I work directly on, but I wonder if safety and security may need to be held where it's at. But that's above me.
All right, thank you. Mayor Bubinek.
Thank you. So 2 questions. One, line 97, you mentioned that job access was super important. While I understand you're saying that ridership is low on the 97, that's the bus that goes down Tualatin Shore Road between Tualatin and Sherwood. That is a job access bus. That's the whole purpose of it, was to get the folks from the West Station down Tualatin Sherwood Road to get to those employment zones that will be expanding in the future, especially with the development of Sherwood's UGB. Second thing is the 96 going to an extra 10 to 15 minutes longer. The whole attraction of the 96 is a rapid transport into downtown Portland from Tualatin. You're now adding 10 to 15 minutes onto that trip. You are going to experience losing more riders. You're putting a bullet into your foot, thinking you're going to get more people on the bus, but you're going to drive more people to cars, because now it takes half-hour minimum to get to work and back. I know you guys are coming to Tualatin City Council in February. Obviously, I'm assuming, Tiger, Tualatin, Sherwood have a lot of issues with this plan because we're the ones impacted the most. We're watching buses disappear in this side of the county like nuts and seeing service being cut. And if you're worried about ridership, these people are going to get in the cars if they can get into a car and never come back. And I've got folks on Boones Ferry Road losing their minds over what you're going to do to 96. Go down Boones Ferry Road from Wilsonville into Tualatin, that the buses blow by them right now, are late or never appear. The ones that are supposed to come. And you're going to go to AM and PM peak hours only. What are those folks to do? I've got a high school on that line. Those kids can't do stuff going to school anymore because you've cut service. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just say, our question here is, what would you do, or what should we do in alternate? So it can't just be don't cut, but what should we cut? So I appreciate anything of those sentiments.
If I could, since that affects Sherwood too, if you don't mind, if I just add a little color to what Frank said. 97, what you're talking about, is the only bus that really effectively serves an employment zone coming out of Sherwood, as Frank pointed out. We have 94, which goes up 99, the only other route into our city that goes to the Tiger Transit Center, that runs all day long, frequently, and is empty most of the day. I sit in the coffee shop and I watch them go by, empty, empty, empty. So I guess my question in terms of suggestions, was there any consideration given to lowering the volume or the rate, number of buses a day on 97 or 94 to preserve 97? So these are just some of the kind of, when we look at it, go, this doesn't make sense. Why don't we reduce service on a line that's not getting heavily used to preserve a line that's serving our employment areas? So I just wanted to throw that out since we were on that subject before I moved on to other folks.
That's a really helpful comment, and we can take a look.
Okay. Mayor Beatty.
I appreciate the sentiment of what would you cut? And I think you got to get a little bit of both sides, because this might be the first time that you're addressing us, but this is most certainly not the first time that we have talked to TriMet about our concerns. And so I think, in respect, a little bit of understanding that Washington County in particular has had this conversation ad nauseum about, we are basically a donor state to TriMet, not only with our high income earners that pay, but every other aspect of it. And so what you're getting is when you talk to your kids and that you've told them something 100 times. So just put it in perspective, what you walked into. So my office at City Hall, Beaverton, I'm sitting on the 5th floor. I have watched 4 MAX trains go by since we've started this meeting, virtually all empty. And so there is a huge issue. And what we've not heard from TriMet ever since 2020, I've been the mayor for 5 years, is what is your plan to increase ridership? So I went to TriMet with an idea, because to go off of Mayor Wenzel's comment about our community right now being deeply impacted by ICE, They're getting picked off in single vehicles, to be blunt. The cars are being left in the road. There's this huge urgency to wanting to try to make TriMet more accessible for our immigrant and refugee population in safety. And I asked TriMet the wrong question. This was my error. I said, how much would it cost to have transit free for 90 days? What I should have asked was, how much is your ticket revenue for 90 days? Not roll up everyone's salary benefit, because the $15 million cost of that was clear to me that I asked the wrong question. What I think from my very like, why isn't that being cut? That is a huge drain on the system. It does not like do anything really. That train has 1 to 2 people on it all the time. It would be much better served as a bike path to be able to be utilized. And I would rather get rid of West than get rid of some of the only bus lines in Sherwood and Tualatin and stuff of that nature. So like, why aren't you guys considering cutting West in this scenario?
I'll be totally honest, everything is on the table. This is what we've chosen to put forward right now. Other things take further study and consideration.
I mean, you guys have all the studies. It costs like $87 per person that rides Max, and that's a 5-year-old thing. So like, with all due respect, you don't need to go back and study that West is not successful.
You said Max, I think you mean Wes.
I mean Wes, right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much studying you guys need to do. Like, it's super expensive. So I appreciate the government response answer to that, but you asked our opinion, we're telling you, and then you're saying, well, we haven't studied that. So the other thing that I just have a little bit of like, I find it very difficult to believe that not having bus services for schools would only be a low impact, considering that PPS has very few buses. Beaverton has the largest busing fleet in the state. And the main reason we do that is because there's TriMet services do not come frequently enough for students to ride. And so part of the other issue that happens in Washington County is we often feel like we're subsidizing PPS's bus system.
Well, a couple things. PPS pays money for the service they provide, that we provide, for one. For two, I would draw again my point broadly about this proposal. 68% of the cuts are happening in Multnomah County. When you talk about that where I scored the school trips, it's the impact is what the proposal is. What if we reduce that to operating for school trips only? And so it's not saying that school service would be eliminated, but rather everything else but school service would be eliminated. So those lines that we're talking about that are operating in the West Hills to both Lincoln and IDB Wells High School, they operate for like 4 trips in the morning, 4 trips in the afternoon, and we would reduce it to just the ones that operate at school time. So, and the other trips beyond school service are the ones that that don't see a lot of ridership. So that's where we're saying that may be a lower impact, knowing that any cut is still a cut.
I appreciate the 68% cut coming from Multnomah County. That would be really meaningful to me if we had even services versus what we paid in. I guess my last question for you is does PPS pays you for the service, but is it at cost recovery?
I don't know off the top of my head. Rough back of the napkin tells me it is.
I would appreciate a follow-up to that. Like, is what PPS pays you actually cover the cost for you guys to do these services? I would appreciate that as an official reply. Thank you.
Mayor Beatty, I can follow up with you about the PPS funding. I believe they pay 1/3 of it and we pay 2/3. It used to be a situation where we pay 1/3, the city pays 1/3, and the school district paid the other third. But that changed at some point, maybe the last 5 or 10 years. I want to quickly respond to a couple of your other points. No one's saying that we need to do more study on West. I don't think. We know how expensive it is. We know what the situation is there. I think we're just saying that it's a complicated issue with a lot of interested partners, including the federal government. There will be more changes that are going to come to our system, and everything will be on the table for that. So it's not off the table. We will continue to talk about it. Second, you mentioned our conversation that we had about free fare for folks riding the system in response to all the horrible things that are happening right now I just do want to confirm with you, I did give you at least the spirit of the number that you were asking for, not what you actually asked for, I guess. We just took the actual fair revenue that we get and I divided it by 4. So that is the number. That's not everybody's salary. That's not all the other operations costs. That's just what we would expect from the fare box in 90 days. That was that $15 million number. But appreciate all of your comments, understand where you're all coming from, and we'll continue to work with you to try and figure this out.
Sorry, my mic was off. Thank you for that. Mayor Hu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the mayors for your comment and question. I agree with all of you. My question, the city team has already conveyed with TriMet about our concerns with specific line cuts, but our overall concern is cut to transit centers. So that's our big picture concern. And my question for you, and we can take this offline as well, as a newbie who's only attending this for the second time, is since we see lower ridership in some lines, I'm wondering if you have ever thought about expanding service for smaller buses, like the sizes like Lyft, but without the expensive equipment of Lyft. And I know this is it's a long-term solution, but instead of cutting services for low ridership route completely, maybe you can deploy smaller buses to accommodate those people who still need those services, but ridership is not there. Again, we can talk that offline if that's not an easy answer. So I'd be happy to talk. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a quick, easy answer. We think about that. We get this question a lot, and we think about it often. Here's the short version. Our largest expense is not the vehicles and the equipment or even fuel. It's labor. Our largest cost is labor. So changing the vehicle doesn't change the calculus there meaningfully. Also, we have some dollar efficiencies by having a consistent fleet that we can deploy the same type of bus from Estacada to Forest Grove. So introducing a different fleet type actually introduces some overhead costs, but not to say that in some cases a smaller vehicle isn't entirely appropriate. And in those cases, such as the Tualatin blue and red lines, the thing that helps actually address that point one, where the number one biggest cost we face is labor, is working with counties to see if they can deploy smaller vehicles using non-TriMet labor. So that's the short answer to that question.
Okay.
And Grant, to add on to that really, really quickly, sorry, Chair. I just want to add that we do specifically attempt to address this with our regional coordination program, Mayor Hu, and that is where we pay Ride Connection and other folks to help deliver those shuttle services that Grant was just talking about. And we are currently not cutting our regional coordination budget for this biennium. So as we are talking about all the cuts across our services, we are not talking about cutting our regional coordination funding for this biennium. So we are preserving those for the time being. That's not to say that they're not potentially on the table for the future. We are continuing to work on an ongoing negotiation, which many folks in this room are aware of, to try and create some consistency and set expectations for that for the future. But right now, we're not cutting those.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Chair. Grant and John, I have a number of questions and quick comments, but I'll start with the easiest one. Lines 20 and 76. That seems to be the lowest proposal that's least impacting Washington County. But I did want to understand a bit more about the dotted line, what that means versus the current network is sort of connected, but then there is a disconnect between the orange lines.
It's only a way to it's not that it would, it's still line 20.
Right.
In fact, we actually used to, this is going back to something that we used to do a long time ago, frankly, but Councilor Duggar Beaverton Council used to live in that area. Breckenridge Apartments knows it well. But the 20 used to be every other bus connected between downtown Portland and all the way to Beaverton Transit Center. But what we're saying is Cedar Hills Boulevard is really good ridership. It's a booming economic area. And indeed, what we're seeing in the impact there is we're actually seeing a job access improvement for connecting South Beaverton to North Beaverton across the BH Highway. So by making line 76, the Cedar Hills portion and the Hall Boulevard portion one line, we're actually seeing a job access improvement there. But the Barnes Road segment of line 20 from Sunset Transit Center to Northwest 23rd and downtown Portland would operate every 30 minutes instead of every 15 as it does today.
Okay, thank you. And I think since you've asked for improvement, I don't know, I know you have a little bit of a clear descriptions, the 3 bullet points, which is very straightforward. But if you could sort of bring that nuances that you just shared live to this slide would really help to constituents to understand the impact and the level of impact, whether positive or negative, to this proposal for our residents. And then we can better articulate those for you as well. And I don't know how that might be a hard pill for Clackamas County, that slide, but the second one I wanted to understand was lines 39 and 45. I have a hard time with the proposal that you're recommending, but then I also don't understand the magnitude of the impact. I know you shared bit detail in your presentation, but it's not coming up live. If I were to just sort of review this slide and sort of educate myself as a constituent so that I can provide a honest comment to say this is how it impacts me. So I don't know if you could figure out some way to articulate the huge gap. This is really a big change, especially for Washington County residents. And what are the other businesses that are going to be impacted? So I wanted to propose that to you, this change, because I see a huge gap of where the orange line, and I have questions about the number 45. What is the alternative options? Could you overlay, is there ride connections services that are also, where are the right connection services here on this map and all the maps that you're recommending? And because I don't know if there's another option. I'm thinking of a different option now with the proposed, so I don't know how to even present that to you. I don't want to redraw the lines, but how do we submit that comment? Is it just through the comment, or is there an opportunity to engage with TriMet staff, with you, Grant, to say, is there a different way to redraw this line?
Commissioner Fye, if we want to take this offline, because I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Fye, I'm happy to follow up with you to make sure that you, A, have all the information that you need, and B, are able to communicate with whoever you feel that you need to or want to at TriMet. We're happy to do that for you.
I could do that. And then I don't have any questions on lines 37 and 38, but I did have, well, I think I was following your conversation about line 47, 97, but there's more. I feel like is there other options to this? Because it seems like we are dipping into, especially like lines 35, 39 and 45, and then we jump to 97. I think we're jumping into areas that are already facing TriMet deserts, that are TriMet desert. Now we're making it even more more significant, that problem. So I just wanted to provide those two feedbacks to you to say that I do have some concerns about line 39 and 35 redrawn. And I would like to engage with all of you to try to figure out how else can we redraw these, or if these are the final proposed network.
Thank you, Commissioner Fine. And thank you for using the term TriMet Desert, because I feel like Sherwood has been stuck in that zone for a long, long time. And we're running a little bit long. We got a couple more people that have. Councilor Rosenthal.
I understand the difficulty that TriMet is in between a rock and a hard place and very limited budgets. I want to make two comments. The first one is, and part of the finger I want to point is at Metro, we did not specifically address a comprehensive transit plan for this whole southern portion of Washington County when we did the RTP in 2023. It's something we cannot avoid. We have a major industrial area, major jobs area, and we're putting 50,000 people along the western edge of Washington County. So I will be very, I should say, forceful, I hope, in trying to make sure that we address this needs and provide for transit for this area. The biggest question, though, I guess, is something that Mayor Beatty brought up, is in the long run, we know that cuts will reduce ridership and reduce usage. Our goal in the long term is to increase transit usage and remove some cars off the freeways to the extent that we can to reduce congestion. What do we have in terms of a long-term plan for actually boosting ridership? What will it take? And I realize that some of this is something that goes way beyond what TriMet can do individually, but I'm just wondering if that is something that is in the works.
Yes, Counselor, we are trying to figure out what the next step is. We need more money. We need more money to be able to provide the service. Costs have increased hugely over the last couple of years, and we don't have the funding to provide the service that we want to be able to provide for everyone right now. We'll be working with you all on how we can engage our state legislature and our communities on different methods to raise money, I think. And we're happy to continue those conversations with you. But right now, I don't have an update on future funding opportunities for us right here, but we're happy to work with you on that for sure.
Well, it's something the legislature is going to be taking up, as you know, so hopefully those will be productive.
Hopefully.
Mayor DeLynn.
Hey guys. First, I got to open up with John Grant. Thank you for coming out and being the targets of our feedback. It's a tough duty, and a couple of people mentioned that, but I wanted to say thank you for, I don't know if you lost a drawing or what happened to you, but thank you for being the recipient of the slings and arrows. I do also want to give you an attaboy for the support of the Ride Connect type services. I think everybody knows how important those are. They get things done. Like I've always said, they're getting things done that I've been asking about for 20 years to get done. So thank you for keeping those whole, not even having them on the Rev 0 cuts or Rev 1 cuts. I think one suggestion is going back on the safety. You guys have tripled, right? That's from your own measures, tripled your investment in safety. And I think maybe I'm not asking you to go back to 33%, but I'm wondering what if, a 5 or 10% cut in safety, would it be, because you've made such taking care of a lot of the broken windows that were going on in the system, right? That there just wasn't any security. There wasn't anything going on. I wonder what a 5 or 10% cut in the security budget would mean to providing and continuing service. So that would be something I'd be interested in. And then I think the one that I waited to the end that didn't get answered. Thanks for categorizing, Grant, that the 68% of the cuts are at the pleasure of Multnomah County. But I think to what Mayor Beatty and our percentage of input and our percentage of draw is. And I think that's what you and I talked about, John, last week, was really an understanding, right? If we look at population stuff, and so often we try to measure by Washington County's 33%, Clackamas is 17%, Multnomah County is about 15%. I don't know where we are on how much money we put in to how much service we get out. And I think that would be a understandable measure for me to look at, understanding how you guys are attacking it, because similar to other people's comments, I don't think we're 33% of the service. I think, we're probably closer to 20%, but I'm not sure. And you guys could give us a better understanding. And I think that would be a good base metric to continue to look at, because if 60 or 70% of the cost is in Multnomah County, maybe 100% of the cuts have to be Multnomah County, if you're asking from a Washington County representative. So I think understanding the percentage of service and the percentage of input would help us. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Dillon. Happy to continue that conversation with you to try and figure out how we can get that for you. Yes, for safety and security, like we said, everything's on the line. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a conversation that's happening too. I'm not sure if this round, those are sort of on the maybe classified as the admin side technically, and we have identified $93 million of cuts on that side. And we have laid off staff and closed positions here at TriMet to the scale of, I think we laid off 68 people, or excuse me, we reduced 68 positions and laid off 26, something like that. Those are contract workers. That's again another category. So that's probably on the table. We'll continue to figure out how we can quantify the value of services that are provided in Multnomah County. In Washington County, I do want to hazard that it is a really complicated question. The value of TriMet services don't exist only when a bus is driving within the confines of a certain jurisdiction. I know there's an interest in how much time is being spent out here, but the value is also in the system itself. We've had this conversation, so I do just want to hazard that it is hard to quantify, and it's not as simple as it sounds. So we'll continue to work on that for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a few things that I wanted to throw out. Not necessarily looking for an answer, but some comments. We talk a lot about cuts. We talk a lot about raising revenue in the form of handouts from the state, et cetera. I'm curious in terms of raising revenue within the network. There's two aspects I think about there. I'm curious why you're waiting till I think you said 28 to raise fares, and what kind of impact that's going to have on the system. And then secondly, I guarantee you, if you had an express route that went from Tualatin and Sherwood to the work centers in Aloha and Beaverton and that area, it would be full every day, back and forth. And I feel like we're still not looking at the systemic problems that the network has today into really serving Washington County. And I think it's a huge problem. You've heard us talk about it forever. And I think you have opportunities to think about this differently and raise revenue. I think the last comment I want to make, it's really hard to evaluate these cuts when we don't know what's coming. I mean, it's obvious that these cuts are not going to solve the systemic challenges you have with your budget. And you've already, told us there's more cuts coming. So, in my simple look at the world, you do it all at once, you get it over with, and you start building again instead of this cuts by 1,000 or death by 1,000 cuts. So, but I want to also echo what several others said. I do appreciate you guys coming today and being the punching bags for this conversation. I know you're the messenger in a lot of this, so I do appreciate you guys being out here today. So if you want to respond to that, great, but I just giving you some input on that.
I honestly don't see this as us being punching bags. We are here with you. You know your community as well or better than we do. And so we are here to partner with you to figure out a solution. We're not here just to be a punching bag. So Thank you for the comments that you've had to be constructive. It really is helpful. Thank you.
Mayor Rosner, if I can reply to a couple of your comments very, very quickly. In terms of cutting all of it now versus later, I just want to recognize that each of our cuts impacts individual people in a very detrimental way. We are delaying I don't know if I want to say it this way, but we don't want to make cuts right now that are going to hurt people when we can push some of them to a later date and hopefully minimize them to the best that we can. We are fast tracking them now based on what we were planning to do in the past. So this is us sort of moving these forward, but we don't want to move them forward so quickly that we hurt people that we don't have to. Second of all, I know you've talked about an express bus to different parts of Washington County in the past. We have a lot of different modeling software available to us. I don't think that these opportunities ever really come up when we are doing the research on our end. I know that we're coming to a work session with City Council in the next month or so. Happy to continue those conversations and see if there's things that we're missing or provide data and feedback on things that you're seeing that we may have answers to and we just haven't discussed.
Yeah, and I may have worded that poorly when I said cuts. I think it's cuts revenue and restructuring altogether. Because you save $1 today, that's $5 in 5 years, right? So the problem just compounds, the more you put it off, is I guess the point I was trying to make. Anyways,
Understood.
Thank you so much for coming in today. We allowed a little bit extra time for this because it's an important conversation, and I do appreciate that you guys be out to one of our city council meetings here a little bit later this month. So thank you for that. All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward to item B, the regional rail study. We have Elizabeth here from Metro to give us an update. We are running a little long, so I hate to ask you, but if you could get us all the content, but be efficient, I guess would be how I would say it.
I will do that. Thank you
Awesome.
so
Thank
much.
you.
I have some slides. If you could bring those up, it'd be great. So I want to start off though by saying that this is how we don't have in our region for transit. And so I just want to emphasize that I have a lot of empathy for where TriMet is and all these important routes that we're looking at making cuts to. It's not easy. So this study is completely different and it's about the future. And so it's a more optimistic, if we have more money kind of thing. So it's a poor follow-up is what I'm trying to get at. So just to next slide. So I'm Elizabeth Morris O'Hara. I'm a principal planner at Metro. I came in July and gave you an overview of what the study is. I'll go through some of these slides pretty quickly to get us back on track. But what I want to do today is remind you where this study came from, why we're doing it, what the process and findings were, our draft recommendations, and next steps, and have a little time for questions. Next slide. So this is not our regular type of transportation planning process. This came from the Oregon State Legislature in 2024. They asked Metro, as part of a bill, to look and see if there was an opportunity to use heavy rail corridors for passenger service and see if there were some opportunities. It's a short 1-year study with limited budget. And so it's really a high level look to say, hey, are we missing something? It is not going to be voted on by Metro Council or JPACT, but it is providing us some information. Next slide. Why did they ask us to do it? It's kind of that big picture thinking. I think our leaders need to be thinking about the future, and we have over 200 miles of heavy rail corridors that are lightly used or abandoned in many places. And so it was a real ask to see if we're missing something in our overall regional planning. Next slide. When I'm talking about regional passenger rail, I think it's important to kind of lay out what that means because there's so many ideas of what it could mean. It means all day trains, not like the West where it's just mornings and afternoons serving those work trips. So it can serve all types of trips. The coverage can really vary from suburb to suburb, city to city, within a city, and they're generally shorter trips than major intercity trains like Amtrak, but longer than light rail, BRT, and bus. And where they've been successful, they've been well integrated into the transit system. So that means having links to bus lines and also park and rides and even airports. Next slide. Another way of thinking about it is we have a transit continuum. Different modes serve different roles. And in the case of regional passenger rail, what you really want to be thinking about is, do we have enough demand in a or in a center that a station is going to draw enough people and then have that longer trip than a light rail where you often have stops all along the way because you have a deeper corridor of lots of different destinations. And then in addition, we need to think about how heavy rail often requires extensive negotiations with railroad owners because almost all of our corridors are privately owned. And it adds another federal regulatory agency. The Federal Railroad Administration has to be involved if you're on heavy rail, where like a light rail just needs to work through the FTA system. So it's more expensive and really requires higher demand, but not as much as like a high speed. Next slide. Here's another way of thinking about it. There's like a sweet spot for different modes of what they can provide for you. So local buses, regular trips, FX, streetcar, and MAX can do all that. Regional trips are a little bit longer. Regional rails, that's really a sweet spot. And it can do some mega regional trips like, going farther to different cities, but it's most appropriate kind of in that middle zone. Next slide. So our process was to review existing conditions. It was to research best practices for when to add passenger rail. We hired a consultant team that had a lot of expertise to help us do this. And then we reviewed current transportation plans and travel demand corridors to see if there are gaps and bottlenecks that this mode could help serve. It involved engagement. We had a technical advisory group made up of jurisdictions, transit agencies, advocacy, and railroads. And so we could get some feedback on what we were learning. Washington County was part of that. Reza Farhudi was your rep. And then we asked ourselves, are there some opportunities that would make sense to pursue in the future? Any corridors that might make sense to study for regional rail? And this could be, maybe it's going to be streetcar, light rail, or different kinds of rail, because digging into a corridor really tells you what mode makes the most sense. Next slide. Existing conditions, we have a lot of rail in our region. We have Amtrak, 5 MAX light rail lines, the West, 2 streetcars, and then we also have things in planning stages like a MAX extension into light rail into Vancouver from Portland. Cascadia high-speed rail study is happening right now, but in our region, buses do the heavy lifting. 62% of the rides happen on the bus. Next slide. So we know rail investments need to fit into our regional transportation system, and they need to serve land uses that exist and are planned into the future. And so we want to think about the centers that people want to access. Next slide. We did a quick review to understand where demand is and where people are traveling to. Like I said, we had 1 year, so this is kind of a high-level look using Replica, GPS, phone-based data. But what we found was the majority of trips are happening within counties or between the major counties. And so people want to go, in Washington County to Washington County or Washington County to Multnomah County. There are not as many trips going outside of our region, but there were some that stood out as important and could end up being more important extra-regional trips. And those were going, north to Vancouver, which again, we said that there is a light rail planned there, so we didn't focus on that. And then also south to Marion and Yamhill counties looked like there could be some demand there. Next slide. And we're not going to start in a vacuum. So we looked at the high capacity transit strategy that was created and adopted into the regional transportation plan to understand the near term, next phase, and developing corridors and the vision corridors, like the big 50-year to 100-year looks. And a lot of this analysis has already gone through regional partners and community, and it was a much deeper dive. So we didn't want to think, reinvent whales. We want to understand how this type of service could fit in. And developing passenger service on freight rail might actually fit more into the longer term vision, the 50-year vision. But we did look at it geographically, and we thought about what it could mean and where it could fall into the priorities for our region. Next slide. So we had 6 major findings that came out of this, and that was based on researching local conditions, best practices that were applied elsewhere, travel demand analysis, and peer interviews and discussion. And what we found is moving forward with this type of service would require significant improvements to many track segments, structures, and crossings, and also station areas. And that would also be really important to make sure that passenger service could be viable. Travel times, safe crossings, and compatibility with traffic and land uses is actually a pretty big lift. The other key finding around passenger service not being the primary business of freight railroads, these are primarily private industry, and they only spend about 10% or less of their time on passenger rail. So to make this mode work, you'd have to work with the freight railroads and make sure that the timelines aren't creating conflict, and it often requires quite a bit of investment. We heard from a lot of our peers that they were required to build double tracking and siding along the railroads that already exist to avoid conflicts. We also learned that providing passenger service into and through the central city would be especially challenging for us. And that's because the track is already at capacity, there's a lot of freight, the operating speeds are extremely slow, and there's all kinds of grade crossings in that urban context that makes it impossible to move the trains quickly the way they are set up right now. So access to our central core is really congested on the roadways, and our main railroad lines share constrained spaces. The steel bridge is largely a bottleneck with lots and lots of congestion, and there are at-grade crossings that are a big deal. Travel demand is highest within the metro region itself, but demand beyond the region, such as Clark, Marion, and Yamhill counties, is an important consideration. Some corridors may not be ripe for passenger service on heavy rail networks yet, but you could start with some bus service to help build that demand in a time when we have more funding, I would say, and create ridership readiness. This is something that a lot of peers have used. Sound Transit built demand with express buses first between Tacoma and Seattle, and they've had a lot of success with Sounder, but they waited till those buses were full before they did the big lift. Higher relative operating costs of regional rail service means it should be reserved for corridors with the most demand that provide critical connections. And that's a really important thing when you think about transit on a continuum. You don't want to invest heavily into something until you know that you need it, because people will start off using the bus and then they can move to higher capacity answers. Next slide. So this isn't saying we're going to run forward and do these right now, but as we dug through our high capacity transit study and looking at where there are rail lines, there were a few strategic opportunities that may merit future consideration. And it's important to understand the challenges and be realistic about those and what it would take to develop those lines. But the following could be analyzed for future passenger heavy rail or light rail or even streetcar connections. Southwest Corridor is the most natural because it's been planned and permitted and agreed to by our region, but it would need a lot of money. And depending on how long it takes before that could be ripe, we may want to reconsider what kind of mode makes sense to serve that area. The Willamette Shore, Portland to Lake Oswego, there's a trolley line there with right-of-way, but it would need community support and additional study before that can move forward. And really another look at mode would be important. Maybe a bus could do some of that lifting. Portland area connections to Salem are come up a lot. And as we know, we don't have a lot of money right now, and Wes is got high operating costs, but in the future, maybe that could make sense if we built demand with bus service. Milwaukee to Oregon City is another corridor. And then Council Creek, Hillsborough to Forest Grove, that right of way just became available and is going to be a great trail area. TriMet also owns some of the right of way. And so there's an opportunity in the future, if the demand is there, to also add a rail service adjacent to that trail line. Next slide. So our study recommendations are really that building ridership with concentrated mixed-use dense development and promising station areas is important if we want to move forward with this mode. And we should probably invest in lower cost ripe transit modes first to build that ridership. We should consider connections to areas outside of the Portland region when they are ready. Travel demand is high across the region, but there could be opportunities in the future. Regional rail is well suited to longer trips that are hard for single transit districts to serve. And we did see some desire for connections outside of our urban growth boundary. Improving cross-regional travel times by leaning into max light rail could make a lot of sense, as there is extensive capacity issues with heavy rail in our central city. So what we could do is focus on improving that slow travel through downtown, improving the steel bridge, which is a major bottleneck, maybe a replacement of that, or a max tunnel. Again, this is long-term thinking. Those are expensive, but they would really speed up cross-regional travel for folks. And then building a long-term vision is essential if we want to move forward with this. For regional passenger rail, service requires a strategic long-term vision that's got funding. It includes super regional land use planning and pulls in the folks that would be affected that may or may not be part of our metro area, and developing a comprehensive multimodal network. The vision is going to have to be integrated with our local and regional plans, and we're going to need a lot of public engagement and support. So transformative investments like Cascadia High-Speed Rail could present an opportunity once the station area is selected to think about what happens in 50 to 100 years. And then also just remembering that passenger rail best fits into a bigger context, a longer context serving longer trips. And it could be part of our future if it's ripe. Next slide. So our next step is we've created this report. The legislature is the one who asked for it, so they're getting that, and then we're going to incorporate any feedback. And then Metro is going to work on integrating the findings into our next update of regional plans. So that will involve all of the folks that we always involve in our planning and think about what we've learned and how it can be integrated. And then we'll share findings and recommendations with any interested parties as we move forward, like you all. Next slide. All right. I hope I went fast enough. Questions? No, I can't hear you.
Thank you for moving quickly before the through that. I know a lot of us have seen a lot of this information before, and I appreciate that. Some quick questions here. Mayor O'Neill.
More of a comment than anything else. I really appreciate the report. I think when looking at Marion County and specifically Salem, I really think the west of Salem aligns perfectly with some of the recommendations that I saw. The 1X route shared between Smart and Chariots has demonstrated success. I think west of Salem would be, I understand all the hurdles, I understand the expense and all that, but I think we're talking about the future vision. I think that is something that would be helpful moving forward. I hope to see that, maybe not in my lifetime, but I think it would be a great step for the city and for our Portland metro area.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mayor O'Neill. Commissioner Fye.
Thank you, Chair. Elizabeth, I don't have a question for you, but I just came off mute to say great presentation, and projects like this really make me dream big and be excited for the future of Oregon. I think our state is going to be state of the art pretty soon, and if only we can get the money, but we'll get there. I think, and it's important to dream and have big visions and do the study and the legworks right now. So thank you for your presentations. You thought you were going to have a hard time following the TriMet discussion funding issue, but you did a great job too, because everything is intersected, right? We're all connected. Good job.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Fye. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Elizabeth, for a good presentation. Two quick questions. One, can you give more information on, is anybody really considering or planning for the replacement of the steel bridge? I mean, that is such a bottleneck, obviously, and would be very critical in any high-speed rail between, further south and Vancouver. And then the other question is, freight rail, except in very strange circumstances, is incompatible with a high-speed or high-capacity people transit. So have you identified the areas where dual trackage is at least feasible as opposed to areas where it's highly constrained? For example, bridge across the river where you'd have to build a whole new bridge or something like that. Have you identified the areas where additional trackage rights of way would allow it?
Well, those are good questions. I know the steel bridge has been on the radar for 30 years at least, because it is a tight bottleneck for our region, and it has been for quite some time. And so while I think everything is going to come down to funding, honestly, Counselor,
It always
I think
does.
everybody would like to do something there. And then so until there's funding, I don't know that it's going to go forward, is I guess my answer. The other thing that I would say is we had 1 year timeline in a short amount of time, but we did do a little study to understand if we looked along where there could be a high capacity transit gap, and we looked at what it would take to make that physically work for passenger rail in a freight corridor. And this was looking like between Tigard and then crossing the Lake Oswego and crossing the river and going over to Clackamas, just to understand what it might take. Frankly, we have to have the political support, funding, and all of those things. And it could be doable. A lot of the questions that come up around, like if you have a station, there's a lot of interaction with traffic. There's a lot of interaction with all the other things. There would be a great need to make sure that you're not causing more bottlenecks by using this mode. The freight crossings are really tough. And then in addition, there would be a lot of places where you would need double tracking, where it has its own track. So you're not wrong. And I think if we went forward with this, one of the things we heard from our peers quite a bit was like some of them are sharing tracks with freight, and West shares tracks with freight, but it's super constraining. And the freight can make it, freight can go 5 miles an hour. That can be fine. But if you're in a passenger rail car and suddenly you're going 5 miles an hour, it doesn't work. So there's a lot of incompatibility around that kind of thing. And so probably it would require extensive investment. I hope that answers your question.
It's a difficult problem. Freight trains operate very differently from passenger trains.
They do, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll just add one comment that in more a historical thing. Sherwood had electric light rail way to downtown Portland, and it was terminated 15 years later. But decisions from the past, all of that right away that we had, that we could have built on in the future. It's unfortunate, but it's the past, anyways. But thank you so much for coming in. Elizabeth did a great job. That was an interesting follow on from the TriMet conversation, but you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, all.
All right. All right, we'll move on to item C, which is our legislative priorities discussion. And I think we have Carly here to help facilitate that.
Right. Good afternoon, Chair Rosner, Vice Chair Pace, mayors, members and community members. My name is Carly Silva Gabrielson. I'm proud to be one of Washington County's government relations managers. I do have some slides, but I will say that I'm just really going to quickly click through them and focus on a few things, because I am really happy to be joined by my counterparts from the city of Hillsborough, the city of Beaverton, and the city of Wilsonville. And I really want to give them opportunity to present their priorities and to have a little bit of a conversation. So we will circulate my slides via email, as well as the board's adopted legislative agenda. Wonderful. So you should be able to see my screen. As I mentioned, I'm just going to click through a few table setting slides at first. It really just describes the short session. These slides detail the wonderful Washington County delegation and their districts, so you can take a look at that. The 2026 session in a nutshell, we are limited to 35 days. It's going to be a full sprint, as we all know, and largely focused on budget adjustments for the loss of revenue, and transportation is now a new recently added hot issue. This slide details bill limitations, which is how we're able to get this work done within 35 days. So you can refer back to that when we circulate the slides. This slide details the county's land use and transportation guiding principles. And while I'm not going to read all of them, I do want to highlight the new principle that we've added this year. And frankly, is a lens that we're applying to all bills, which is that the county is going to be opposing all new legislative mandates that do not allow time and funding for local government implementation. As you're all well aware, the county has experienced consistent and substantial gaps in our general fund, and the increasing array of state mandated programs are causing significant further strain and is forcing the county to have to take a look at which essential services the county can continue to provide and which need to be reduced or returned to the state to carry out, such as was recently done with the child support services due to insufficient funding. So because of these realities, we're taking an even more forceful stance in opposing every new bill that contains unfunded or underfunded mandates on the county. I also want to acknowledge a significant announcement from last week with Governor Kotek calling for the repeal of House Bill 3 and outlining a governor-led process to develop a comprehensive funding package for the 27 session. I think it goes without saying that we all have a lot of work on our plates ahead this year and into next to accomplish this shared goal to move our transportation system away from short-term funding patches and towards a more sustainable, predictable transportation funding framework. So I know we're all waiting for more information on that. Economic development, we're really excited about the renewed focus on strengthening Oregon's economy, and Washington County looks forward to partnering with local jurisdictions in the state on strategies that support this development. We also feel strongly that we need to ensure that any new economic development programs or requirements are really fully funded, designed, and implemented by the state. Again, ensuring that that is not passed on to counties and cities. I also want to highlight that I'm actually just going to click through our housing and homelessness guiding principles and let you all refer back to that. But I do want to highlight the one capital funding ask that we're going to be focused on is really protecting and preserving the $1.25 million that Washington County received for the courthouse replacement planning. It is on a cut list from the Oregon Department of Justice for their budget reduction. So we are defending that tranche of money and ensuring that the delegation knows the dire reality on the ground at the courthouse, not only that it is seismically unsafe, but that the current room compositions really don't provide victims or attorneys the privacy that they need to really conduct their work. The rest of these slides just touch on, again, the legislative session and calendar. And of course, we also have our famous OWL closing question slide. But before we open it up to conversation, again, I want to bring my counterparts online. I have Andy Smith from the city of Hillsborough, Jocelyn Blake from Beaverton, and Everett Wild from Wilsonville, who will talk a little bit about their priorities. Let's go to you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. My name is Andy Smith, and I represent the city of Hillsborough. So the city of Hillsborough's legislative agenda is pretty similar to the county's. It's really three things. It's economic development, it is housing production and homeless response, and it's ICE response. So it's those three broad issues. I think that I'm here today to talk mostly about the economic development piece because we've been working along with a coalition that's statewide with Senator Salmon, developing her bill that she has titled the Oregon Jobs Act. And so I'm just going to quickly run through what that bill is going to do, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know we're short on time, so I'll be brief and high level. The bill essentially covers three areas that are really important for competitiveness in terms of Oregon versus other states. It is land availability and readiness for industrial development.
is incentives in the tax environment in the state of Oregon for these employers, and it is the regulatory climate in Oregon. And so the bill touches on all three of those areas. And so starting with land, it's pretty straightforward. It is the Senate Bill 4 lands that I'm sure many of you are very well aware of that were in Senate Bill 4 delegated to the governor to bring in if she chose. She did not choose to do that, and she has cited some legal concerns from the language of the statute as the reason that she didn't do it. And so we're just asking now that the land come in by legislative amendment so that there is not a long drawn out legal process because the land is desperately needed right now to serve Oregon's competitiveness for years to come. Senator Salma is putting in that provision that the land is not to be used for standalone data centers or for retail fulfillment centers. So that's an often cited kind of criticism from folks, and we're just putting it in the statute or the proposed statute that those uses are not allowed to kind of quell those concerns. Moving on to incentives, there's several pieces to this. First, Carly spoke about the state not passing the cost of economic development onto local governments. Well, the R&D tax credit is one of the ways the state can put its own resources to work to incentivize the kind of industrial development that we want and the jobs that we want to have in Oregon. In 2023, the legislature created the research and development tax credit for semiconductor companies, but they only made it refundable if the company has 3,000 employees or less. That left Intel out of having a refundable tax credit. And I believe with Lam's expansion that they may also not be qualified for the semiconductor tax credit refundability. We are proposing to expand the research and development tax credit beyond semiconductors to advanced manufacturing generally, and that's a term that will need to be defined, and we're working on a holistic definition with stakeholders of what is included in advanced manufacturing, but we're intending for it to be more broad than narrow when it comes to the types of uses in advanced manufacturing. And the current cap on the semiconductor research and development tax credit differs by biennium all the way up until sunset, but I think it's generally around $80 million a biennium of R&D credit. And so this really just creates a substantially similar credit and statute that applies to advanced manufacturing, but leaves the semiconductor credit in place. And that was just a technical, some technical feedback we got from folks who understand and have worked on that statute for a long time. So that's the R&D tax credit. The second piece is a new capital equipment property tax relief program. It would be a local option, so nobody has to do it, but it would be up to a city or a county or to determine if they wanted to offer a 5-year tax exemption for equipment, capital equipment investments. That is designed to mirror some of the provisions in HR 1 that incentivize American manufacturing. And so trying to make sure that Oregon is competitive. It's also an important tool for local economic developers. It's very similar to the enterprise zone program, frankly, but without the geographic boundaries or the administrative requirements that come with that program. So it's intended to be a little bit more flexible and allow for jurisdictions to make more targeted and more simple exemptions for significant and qualified projects. And then we're proposing to make a couple tweaks to the enterprise zone program that are important, but not terribly substantial. And the issue is that in 2023, the legislature said that school districts need to receive a fee in lieu of the exemption for their part of the abatement that they give up with their local property taxes. And school districts really aren't designed to be set up to receive payments from private companies. And so oftentimes we have heard that they're not showing up to the conversations, and that creates a concern for zone sponsors that they can't move forward if the district isn't coming to the table to receive the fee. So all we're proposing to do is, the zone sponsor is going to notify the districts who it applies to that there's an agreement in the works. And if they want to come to the table, they have a certain amount of time to let people know they're coming to the table to receive the fee. And if they do, they get the fee, but just their non-response is not going to be a hold up for the overall negotiation on the enterprise zone agreement. We're making a little tweak to the regionally significant industrial sites program. It's really just, it only applies to the rural portion of that program. So it's not an issue for the metro area, but it is something for the city of Pendleton. And I won't go into the details, but basically they need to be able to aggregate their jobs in their regionally significant industrial area and still qualify for the reimbursement from the state. And then the regulatory reform piece is basically it's just telling state agencies that they can set their own permit deadlines as long as they're reasonable and efficient. And if they don't meet the deadlines, then they have to finish the permit and refund the applicant its fees. And it's just designed to bring a little accountability to the state permitting process. That's the bill. That's Senator Solomon's bill. She's been a great champion for economic development in Washington County. Mayor Pace may want to add a little bit of information to what I said, but that's what I had planned to cover today. Thank you.
Thanks. Chair, do you mind if I jump in?
No, go ahead.
Thanks. Andy, thanks for the briefing. And I appreciate everybody's time. And we're also grateful for Senator Solomon for prioritizing our state's economy in this short session. And I think this is a great conversation on the heels of what we were just talking about. Bottom line is we need money. We need investment. And we're looking at an opportunity to generate 1.5 billion with a B or more in personal income tax revenue for the state. And that's approximately 134 million per year. And this is, I think this is significant from a geographical area and not just from an additional induced economic activity. It's related to that this will occur all over the state. So, and it has a potential to generate about 26,000 jobs and an additional 4,000 construction jobs. So I think it's pretty significant. And we're looking at about a 3.5% employment increase over current baseline. And it would increase statewide GDP about 372 billion over 20 years, and an opportunity for the total state revenue of 6.3 billion. So I think this is pretty significant. And, you know, would love everybody's support. And if you want more questions, of course, just contact us. And regarding land readiness, Andy talked a little bit about this, but, you know, preliminary infrastructure, land use, and economic assessments of the area have already been done, and that occurred in 2008. And then that was advanced forward in 2024 as a part of the SB4 assessment. And this land has become significantly more development ready and served by industrial scale infrastructure based on the build out inside Hillsboro's already, you know, working industrial lands over the past couple of years. And if you want a tour of the area, we'd love to give it to you. And if you've already taken a tour, a lot has changed. So please just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Chair,
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask Mayor Pace, thank you, and Andy, where do we get the content of that bill? Where do we read the context?
Yeah, Andy, do you mind answering that?
Sure. And hi, Commissioner Fye. I believe that that Ariel had sent their materials around, and so Carly should have them, and it's an LC draft, and it's going to need an amendment. But I think that the materials we sent around are the legislative concept and the kind of suggestions that we're asking for in terms of how to change the language in an amendment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. Carly, yeah, if you could, I didn't see that attached in the link on the online. I just wanted to hopefully about the 5-year tax exemption or the tax abatement piece, there's a bit more information about how we define the equipment or the definition of what's considered. Perfect. Thank you.
I'll talk with you, Commissioner. Staff's looking at the details now, so we'll send you an analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Commissioner Fye.
Awesome. Thank you. Mayor Beatty.
Thank you. I've been thinking about your guys' bill a lot, particularly since it's being asked for sign-ons. And I would say, like, by and large, the majority of it I'm pretty excited about. You know, I think it's not lost on any of us in this room that the governor's prosperity council that was announced last week had no local government in it. which really speaks volumes to what the state government thinks about local government. As the people that create the economic engine but do not share in the prosperity, I appreciate the numbers you said about GDP, but it doesn't truly impact cities when our revenue is property tax. So my concern about a property tax abatement, and again, and I get like it's city by city, and I most certainly am not going to get in the way of another city, but as a landlocked city that doesn't have the ability to expand in industrial, it's going to continue to maybe fortify Hillsborough's budget while a lot of us are suffering. And what I think is going to happen, or let me take this back. What I want to make sure doesn't happen is that the property tax abatement stays, but none of the state's responsibility. Like, I don't want to get it watered down to the point that the bill passes and the only thing in it is a property tax abatement, because we can't continue to live along where cities are foregoing property tax revenue to bring in businesses when we create the revenue that the state gives away. And so that is just a piece that I am no response today. That's just what I'm thinking about, and I want us greater minds to make sure that we could collectively fight to make sure that's not the only thing that stays in the bill.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mayor Beatty, and I'm happy to be in that fight with you. And this is not just about Hillsborough. I'm a team player. You know, from the military, you don't get through anything alone, right? And that I want to do this together. I want all of us to benefit, especially Washington County.
Great. I'll just add to that. I mean, there's major businesses in Sherwood that would not exist if we didn't have anchor employers like Intel. So I think it's incredibly important we make those investments. I do, and I consider this an investment. You know, the state giving up income tax to make this happen is an investment in our future, and we need to be doing those kind of things, and it needs to be balanced, not against local investments, using that term, but it's got to be balanced with state investments, and also in a way that we're competitive with other states. You know, Ohio, Arizona, New York, the Carolinas, you know, you name it, you know, we have to be competitive if we're going to win those deals. So
yeah, I agree. You know, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah.
This is a weird stat, but before COVID, we saw stats of people who were coming into Hillsborough to work and then leaving Hillsborough to go to work. And so again, this is pre-COVID, but there were 50,000 people that came into Hillsborough to work, which means they weren't living in Hillsborough. They were paying property taxes and purchasing, you know, dinners and using dry cleaners and all that in other towns around Hillsborough. And I think that benefit will still be there. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions or other legislative agenda items that folks want to talk about?
Yeah, Rosner, I think we have Beaverton and Wilsonville on the call. And I know we're really pressed for time. I'd love to give them a minute or two.
Okay. Beaverton,
yeah, and I can go ahead and jump in. I can be very, very quick.
Okay.
Just to add on what everyone has been talking about in Justin Blake, City of Beaverton government relations. So we are in alignment with our kind of 4 top priorities: ICE response, transportation, economic development, and housing. I won't belabor the points that have already been made, but I do want to add, from an ICE response, it was very important. We had a work session last Tuesday for my council on what it looks like for direct allocations for community-based organizations in Beaverton, in Washington County. So we're working on some updated language around that. Also including increasing social and legal support for immigrant and refugee communities, and providing greater accountability for federal officers operating within Oregon, including like mask mandates and implications on operations without a federal warrant. For transportation, I just wanted to add on, because it wasn't expressly said, but I think around 50-30-20, the governor's announcement we know that they're going to be looking at House Bill 2017 revenues, largely large project revenues. And we just want to uphold that anything that is state highway fund eligible maintains in the 50-30 fund 20 funding formula, because cities cannot wait until 2028 to continue to have transportation revenue. And then just to add to the housing piece, Beaverton strongly opposes repealing House Bill 3115, which is time, place, and manner restrictions on camping and homelessness. We don't want to see the progress that we've made with the city's ordinance be lost. And on economic development, just the disconnection strategy, we're really looking for a balance that upholds our competitiveness while making sure that some of the major state funding sources and our state shared revenues don't bear the burden of that. So with that, I'll pass it on. Thank you for the opportunity and happy to answer questions.
All right, and I think Wilsonville.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rosner, Vice Chair Pace, WCCC members, and thanks, Carly, for coordinating this. A lot of things that you've already heard already: no unfunded mandates, more control, local control over housing issues. Some things that are very Wilsonville specific is continuing the momentum on the Boone Bridge replacement through some preliminary site studies. We've got some federal advocacy going on and just keeping legislators up to speed on that project. As it relates to transportation, we really want to ensure that tolling, including tolls on the Boone Bridge, which was specifically named in the statute that got repealed in House Bill 3991, remain out of any renegotiated transportation package. Felt, very particular to us because we were named in the statute. And then we're also working, it was kind of mentioned earlier, with the OGEC work group to make sure that the interpretations of Oregon's public meetings and serial communications laws are within the legislative intent and some reasonableness standards. A very Wilsonville specific thing that we're working on is a technical fix to House Bill 2658 from last session. That bill prohibited cities from requiring frontage improvements when a property owner makes changes within certain limitations, like under 150,000 doesn't change the envelope of the building. This arose out of a case in Portland where a realtor was trying to move into a new building for that realty office, and the city of Portland required them to do a half street improvement. And they're saying that was a large cost to them, and so legislation was passed in response to that. Our concern with the bill as written is that it does not take into account potential traffic impacts from an improvement. For example, a restaurant could add a drive-through window for less than $150,000. That's under the threshold. You're not changing the footprint of your building, but by adding a drive-through window to your restaurant, you are dramatically changing your traffic flow in and out of a strip mall or an intersection. So we want to make sure that public roadways remain safe and passable. So we want to try to tie the transportation improvements to the trip generation, not the building occupancy classification group, which is how they're structured now. So we're looking at several opportunities to incorporate this into a fix-it bill or as an amendment to something. If you'd like to learn more, happy to share more information with anyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Everett. Well, we are running behind, we are as you know, we're coming into the short session. So as things progress, if there's members of this committee that think we should be weighing in with a letter or something like that, let myself and the vice chair, Mayor Pace, know, and we can do that via email, or if we have a meeting in time, we can do it via that meeting. But just let us know, because it's going to be an interesting session. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part of our meeting. We have our regional committee updates, and I believe Mayor Kirk, are you first? Who's first? Oh no, it's Mayor Delenn and Commissioner Fye, JPAC. Do you have any updates for us?
You caught me dual meeting. I'm bad boy. Hold on a second here. Look at my stuff. Apparently they're still struggling to get the agenda posted, because I was trying to read it this morning and not everything works. But basically, we got review the minutes, RTO timeline program updates. JPAC legislative priorities, which I think are going to sound a lot like what we just had in this discussion, only for Metro. And then we got some updates, basically Rose Quarter project update, and then work plans that are coming up, and then the ODOT's 10-year capital investment plan. We'll see if they actually get to that one or not. Commissioner Fye, did you have any thing?
Nope, you didn't miss one step. Good job.
Awesome. Well, I'll jump to the impact update. We don't have an agenda yet for the next meeting, so similar story there. Last meeting, we had a update on the Vancouver's comprehensive plan and what they're doing with housing. They plan on adding a lot of housing and a lot of jobs up there, which doesn't surprise me given their tax structure compared to ours. We also got an update on the Future Vision project, which we've all seen that update, so that was a little bit repetitive. And they did give us an update on the youth and community engagement project that they're working on, but no big decisions or nothing like that coming out of impact. So unless there's a question, I will move right into R1 Act and Mayor Bubanek and Mayor Winslow.
We haven't had a meeting since December 1st. We got one coming up in February. So we already gave the update from the December meeting, our last committee meeting.
Well, that was easy. All right, then we'll go ahead. Oh, and then Northwest Act, Mayor Kirk.
Yes, there wasn't that much in the last meeting. It was in December, but otherwise the February 12th meeting will be in the city of Banks. If anybody wants to attend, it'll be from 1 to 3 at Banks Fire Station on Main Street. I don't know if we're going to have time to work on that other item that we were hoping for. There is, if you haven't been paying attention to the news, you know about the slides and stuff during Christmas vacation on Highway 6. Commissioner Jerry Willey did do a state emergency proclamation trying to get money from the state of Oregon to help out with that because the slide is actually within Washington County. It doesn't look like any of the ODOT from Region 2 showed up. But we have Stephanie.
If you're ready, I am prepared to talk about Mayor Rosner's and your response.
Yeah, and just a lead in for everyone. We had the mayor's Washington County mayor's meeting, and we had a pretty robust conversation around the challenges with Highway 6. For those of you that are not familiar, that connects the region to Tillamook, which is a major, not to mention people travel on that road, but it's a major commerce connection. And so we wanted to add that real quick in the other business. But Mayor Kirk, this was your request. Do you want to lead into that a little bit and some of the concerns we have as a region, and we can let Stephanie give us an update?
Yes, Highway 6 has been concerned for a long time. Senator Weber has, and also Senator Betsy Johnson, prior, and Tillamook has been pushing for years, trying to get some money to get this updated, other than a goat trail that keeps sliding into the different ravines. There was a updated plan that was put together in 2023. If you want, you can go on the ODOT website and see that, or I can send it to you. It did show some of the harder impacted areas and the reason why we have constant problems. Mile 35, where they have right now, unfortunately, they used what is definitely now a very outdated concept of infill. But luckily they're using large boulders and a bunch of gravel to get the one lane fixed, and the other lane is also compromised. They do have a temporary roadway going along the side, but I'm assuming they're going to be doing both lanes. And then I can, if I'll let you call the shots, Tim. Which hand do you want first?
Okay. I think Stephen wants to weigh in real quick, and then we'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Yeah, just a really quick comment, and maybe Commissioner Pai was going to say something, but I know our board adopted an emergency declaration last week, highlighting the importance of Highway 6 and urging ODOT and the governor to take actions needed to try to help make some longer term repairs there. So just wanted to share that context.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Stephanie.
Yeah, well, thanks for giving me a couple of minutes on the agenda. I know it's packed today. So I've gathered this information from our Northwest area. So Bill Jablonski provided this information for me. We're separated pretty much in forced growth. So this is all secondhand, but I'm gonna do my best to share. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to bring them back to Astoria, to get those answered. So one of the questions was, what are we doing on Highway 6? And the answer I got was more in the immediate fix that's happening. So it sounds like they've been making good progress on that fix. They're expecting to pave this week. They're estimating for the westbound lane to be open the first week in February, but there's continual movement. Essentially, it's this whole area, like even you see it on 26 too, they're having landslide issues. Seems like everything woke up this year. And the last time it really woke up was in 96, so about 30 years ago. So they're doing the best they can to fix the sunken grade that happened on Highway 6, but there's no guarantees that it will be a permanent solution. But they're putting in a culvert to try to help with drainage, and they're rebuilding. They're pulling out that non-traditional, what we wouldn't use today, fill, which was sawdust, and doing a more traditional rebuild. So I can show you a quick picture that might be helpful, though, of just the extent. It was about 500 feet of the sunken grade. It tells the story itself, I believe. Just the extent of it. So this section of it will be fixed. So about 500 feet will be all new, and it'll feel really nice to drive on. Beyond that, it's not getting that emergency repair, and it's still going to be pretty rough and out there. So just wanted to give that caveat that it's going to be rough outside of this immediate fix. Any questions on the fix or any comments that I can bring back to Bill about maybe
fix that?
The desire for a larger fix?
I really appreciate the photo. Thank you.
Yeah, it's helpful, isn't it? It tells a lot. And then there was an additional question about cell service on Highway 6. And I think that came from you, Mayor Rosner, about how there's a dark, pretty dark, a long extended dark spot for cell service over that highway. And they did share that Amazon is going in Tillamook, and in preparation for that, they're laying fiber along OR6 right now. And once that fiber is in, it'll be easier for the utilities to put in infrastructure for cell towers and cell service over the mountain range. That's not an ODOT thing necessarily, but we could, they're willing and ready to start the conversation with utilities when they're there to do it through expedited permitting or whatever that would look like to try to assist with that. But it's really a utility question and not a transportation question.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephanie. I think the question came out. It's a safety issue. Although I think back to when I was a kid, when we didn't have cell phones, and anytime you went outside of urban area, it was a safety issue. But I appreciate the update. I think it's important. It highlights the importance of maintaining our infrastructure in the state, especially as we go into this short session and talk about transportation. So any questions for Stephanie or Stephen on this for that matter? Mayor Delenn.
Stephanie, I'm gonna pick a scab a little bit.
Okay.
May not have the answer this time, but maybe next month you can tell us. How many millions or hundreds of millions have we spent already in this section of Highway 6, patching it versus doing the hard fix, which is we probably need to rebuild the whole section with a different design?
Yeah. I'll get you that answer.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
And I'm going to say something kind of unpopular, but maybe popular. When it's the emergency like this, we qualify for federal dollars in a way that like we might not otherwise. And so there is a small positive to that coin. I mean, it's horrible still. You never want an emergency to happen, but it does help bring those federal dollars into the system.
Thank you for sharing the silver lining.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if we could get those federal dollars to prevent emergencies from happening?
Exactly.
That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. Well, it is 1:59. Unless, Marcia, do you have another quick comment?
Well, just really quick, what I'll do is I'll try to get some more information to Stephen in between now and our next meeting. There's a lot better photos, especially when you live out in Banks, and that contractor got the stuff. So I'll share it with him so it can go out to the group.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcia. Well, now it is exactly 2:00. We made it. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful next month. I'll see you all again in a month.